Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are, whenever you are. Welcome back to yet another community watch party for a Pantheon developer update stream. I just poured myself a nice BazgrimTV mug of water, and I am ready to go. How's everybody doing? This is the time. This is the pre-show where we get caught up on everything that's been going on in the past month. How are you all doing? I see Kelem. I see Edimus187. I see Jothany. The early birds, welcome. You guys are the real ones showing up this early. The Visionary Realm stream is going to be starting up in about 24 minutes, but I've been very busy lately. I don't know about you guys. I've been very busy with a lot of different things between work and wedding planning. I think I mentioned a couple months ago that I'm going to be getting married later this year, and of course that has its own. It's very exciting, but it has its own, planning process involved. And then between working on the Library of Pantheon also, which I've talked about, which is a huge time commitment, but also, again, just super fun. Like these are all, it's pretty much all good things, but it's very fun things, but also just very time consuming. So been very busy, quite tired. So it's kind of nice. It feels nice to let's just slow down. Let's chill out for a little bit before we dive into the dev stream later, which, by the way, is going to be a showcase exclusively about the monk class. And so all the monk fans out there, rejoice, this night is for you. I just before I went live, or actually as the stream countdown was happening, and I was just kind of sitting here thinking about the monk class in Pantheon and how I really like the monk. It's actually a class that I identify with personally in some ways. I have, not so much recently, but I have done quite a bit of martial arts in my day, and Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu and stuff, which particularly Muay Thai is a martial art that the monk animations seem to be heavily inspired by. And so between that and then also just the overall just mentality of a monk, of just being very balanced and all that sorts of stuff, really resonates with me on a personal level. But yet I was thinking about this, that I very rarely ever play a monk in any MMO. I have one in EverQuest, but that's not really saying much because I've played pretty much every class in EverQuest, and I really haven't played the monk that much. It's odd. It's odd to like a class so much, but from afar, and never actually play it. Edimus187 said it perfectly. I saw just before I turned on my camera, he said, "I honestly doubt I'll play one, but monks are such a unique class. I'm looking forward to seeing what VR has planned for them." That's right where I'm at. It's really exciting to see what they come up with. I hope to see some interesting evolutions for the class, because it is a really cool class. It's a class that I love having in my group. It's a really really powerful and versatile class. So obviously I'm interested, but I just don't know if I'll end up playing one. I kind of foresee with Pantheon, I will probably try every class at some point, and we'll see what sticks. But so yeah, that's where I'm at. Goofy Warrior Guy says, "I made a monk from Vanilla EQ through 8 expansions to Omens of War before moving to WoW, and then played a monk when it came out in WoW for a few years. So really excited about tonight's stream." See, there you go. See, that's a real monk fan right there. So yeah, so you're extra invested in what we got going on tonight. That's a big deal. That's sweet. And also, by the way, I just got to give a shout out to Goofy Warrior Guy, because he's one of the guys who is, guys and girls actually, which is helping me with the building of the Library of Pantheon. So very appreciative of the time that he has put into that. Jothany says, I play an unarmed combat character in Asheron's Call. Pretty similar. I know very little about Asheron's Call. I've heard about it. And actually, the way I heard about it, I was completely oblivious about it until I started playing DDO, because Turbine, which is the same company that made DDO, also made Asheron's Call. And so I heard about it a little bit through that, but it's pretty intriguing because it seems like it came out around the same time as EverQuest, but was kind of like stuck in the shadows, so to speak, of EverQuest, because EQ was just dominating at that time. No official classes. Your class was your weapon. That is pretty that's pretty intriguing. I don't know if I tend to not prefer games that are like that, but I can appreciate the uniqueness of it and how and that would definitely be like a very different play style. Good for Warrior Guy says, I'm actually interested in seeing if monks in Pantheon will have abilities tuned for pulling, or if they're going to try to avoid having a puller roll at all. You know, that's kind of interesting, where pulling is an emergent behavior. It's one of those things that like there doesn't need to be a like officially sanctioned puller roll. Like players are going to figure out what abilities that are already in a class's toolkit that are just beneficial for pulling. Like people will just figure it out. Like there will be pullers, like, and especially since we know that that the dungeons and zones in Pantheon are being designed in such a way where you can, like, if you want, you can set up a camp and, you know, get like a group of mobs that you can just, you know, break and pull one by one back to like a good fighting spot. So we know that type of gameplay will be present in Pantheon, and I really doubt that like the devs are going to go to great lengths to prevent that type of behavior. Like there's nothing wrong about that at all. So, but at the same time, you know, are we going to see abilities that are like, this is obviously just for pulling? Like, I don't know, but regardless, you know, there might be abilities that maybe the developers had something different in mind, but the players realize that it's actually really important for pulling. And that's just kind of one of the beautiful things about MMOs, is that emergent behavior and players figuring these things out on their own. And I know from like a designer / developer perspective, that when you make a game and the players start coming up with these like strategies and synergies and stuff that you couldn't have even imagined, but the players from their perspective, you know, put the pieces together and come up with these completely new ideas. Like that's actually a really exciting moment as a designer. And that, in my opinion, is a sign of a really good game that that allows that level of freedom, you know, in the design, where players can just kind of just create their own unique strategies like that. More people filtering in here with about 16 minutes to go. Nagasaki, how's it going? Prismatic Dave's in the house, how's it going? We got Bronson, Raphael, Nunam. My apologies if I'm butchering any of these pronunciations. But happy you are all here on this July 1st. Happy July, by the way. Can you believe it's July already? That's insane. Jothany says, since anyone can pull, it seems like splitting should be the real skill for that role. Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. And you know, and that reminds me, like, feign death is obviously a huge part of that, and we know monks will have feign death. So again, like, people will figure out a way to split. Exactly how that plays out, I don't know. That will be interesting to see. But that reminds me though, like, I really hope maybe even in this stream tonight that they kind of talk more in depth about feign death, because it's been brought up a lot, like, over the years about the pros and cons of feign death, and it can historically has been kind of like a pretty problematic ability. Like, it's very powerful, it's very polarizing. Like, it can be really, really good, but it can also be really really controversial, I guess. And I hope that they further, like, explain the kind of the ins and outs of that, but also just my personal hope is to see, like, again, an evolution of that ability to not just be the same old thing that, like, that we've seen forever, which is, like, you know, you press feign death and you just immediately collapse to the ground, and more often than not it's like a get out of jail free card where, like, NPCs just stop attacking you. Like, you just drop aggro. Obviously there's, like, some chance, there's some RNG involved where there's, like, a chance that they don't believe you, like, if your skill isn't high enough, that they might continue to attack you. But, like, for a while I've been just kind of, like, theory crafting in my head these, like, there's gotta be a better way to do that is more interesting. It isn't so much of a get out of jail free card, it's more skill based. So, like, if you can imagine with me for a moment, that, like, in my mind, if I start very literally, like, feign death, I immediately get this idea of, like, if I'm running along, like, let's say I got, like, a train of things behind me and I'm running along, and and let's say the mobs are, like, way behind me, and I hit feign death and I just, like, collapse to the ground. This is where the, like, intelligent behavior of NPCs comes into play, because historically in MMOs, who have typically very stupid NPCs, again, as soon as you hit the ground, NPCs just stop dead in their tracks, and, like, they'll just maybe just stand there for a little bit for, like, a set period of time, and then if you succeeded obviously in your feign death, and they'll just, like, kind of stand there, and then they'll just, like, turn around and walk away. It's like, what is going through their mind where, like, do they think that you just, like, conveniently had a heart attack and instantly collapsed to your death, like, while running away? Like, that's it. I hate to use the word immersion, but, like, that's kind of immersion breaking if you think about it. And it just seems too binary to me, and just, like, too dumb. Again, okay, maybe if we have variability in the intelligence level of NPCs, maybe there are some very, like, dumb NPCs who would fall for that, and, like, oh, he looks dead. Okay, like, but, like, you really think that most, like, humanoid NPCs or intelligent NPCs are really just gonna just believe that you just conveniently died while running? Like, it seems like it would be so much more interesting to me if, like, there was a variable involved where maybe you have to, like, time it so that it's not just your character skill, but it's also your player skill as well, where, like, whenever you get hit, you have a certain time window in which to use feign death. So basically you're trying to convince the NPC that it was that hit that killed you. It wasn't just pure happenstance. Like, they hit you hit feign death to make it look like that hit was the one that killed you. And again, maybe, like, into more intelligent NPCs will still like maybe stick around and like, you know, poke your body a little bit to see if you know, if you actually are convincingly dead. So something like that, just like that. This is a very basic example. I'm not saying it's perfect, but it seems like something like that would actually add a lot of depth to feign death, and then also might kind of mitigate some of the get out of jail free card type aspects where, you know, we've all heard these examples of how feign death can be used very negatively and for griefing. Like, let's say somebody is mad at you and they just go like round up the whole zone, bring them to you, feign death, and then immediately pass them off to you. You could, if done correctly, try to mitigate some of that behavior too, where like you can't just hit the feign death button and immediately drop all aggro. Like, you gotta be you gotta be able to take a hit. So if you're gonna round up a whole zone to try to pass it off on somebody else, like, you gotta take a hit in order to convince them that you are actually dead. And so there's a little bit more risk there, because maybe you might end up dying in the process. So I don't know, some things to think about. I'm curious to see what they come up with that. Annoying Llama says, is it over? Did I miss it? No, we haven't even started. This is the pre-show. We got 9 minutes to go. In 9 minutes, the Visionary Realm stream is going to be kicking up. This is me. This is me just talking. This is just hanging out with you guys. Nunam says, maybe a critical hit would open up an opportunity to feign death. Also a good idea. It might be a little bit more tricky, because like, depending on how often you get critically hit, you might not have very many opportunities to feign death, and like, that's kind of random. Getting critted is kind of random. You also would have to be very obvious. There would have to be some sort of notification that's very clear that when you get critically hit, so that you know when to react to it. And it can have, either way, you know, it should have a fairly generous window. I don't know, maybe even like 2 or 3 seconds, where within that window you can use feign death. But yeah, I'm just not really a huge fan of the like getting like a train of mobs and you're like nowhere near them and you just feign death and just immediately lose all aggro. It seems too easy to me. I know all you like monk fans who have been relying on feign death for years probably don't really like my suggestions, but this just giving my observations. Matt KWI says, does a lower intelligence humanoid care if you fell over dead? They probably eat you anyway. Also a good point. Depending like if it's maybe like a bloodthirsty zombie or something where all they care about is just eating your flesh, then yeah, they don't care whether you're dead or alive. Like, they're just gonna keep coming after you. Like, that's great. Like, that variation in the types of NPCs that you're going against, and having to actually think about like, what is this NPC thinking? Like, that's something, it seems like that would fit perfectly in Pantheon. You got like the dispositions, and the last month they were talking about the NPC combat awareness and the different strategic levels of NPCs. Yeah, I would love to see that applied to feign death, and like how easily they are convinced that you actually died, or maybe they just don't even care at all. Jothany says it should be like trying to play dead with a bear. You have to be brave and tough and have real willpower, because the bear is going to kick you around a bit. Yeah, exactly. That's a perfect example, because like a bear, obviously they're animals, so they're not really as intelligent as humans, but they're also not dumb animals. Like, they're pretty smart. You might be able to convince them that you're dead, but yeah, like, even if they that's awesome. And I love thinking about the implications of that, where like, even if you do feign death, like I said, they might kind of like poke you around them. It might kind of like take a little swipe at you just to make sure that you're actually dead and you don't flinch. You know, and that all plays into your like character's skill level of like how good at feign death are you, that, you know, you can maybe, even when you're like lying on the ground, they might just like take one last little hit at you, and if you don't flinch, then they'll be like, okay, he's obviously dead. Yeah, like Raphael saying, why not have the NPC check the corpse? That's perfect. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And should RJ Seltzer says it should only work on things that wouldn't like to eat you. Exactly, like a guard, you know, like they're not trying to eat you, but they're also they're gonna want to make sure you're dead if they really don't like you. Nagasaki says it's funny that non-monk players think Feign Death is OP and monks think it's underpowered and very iffy. I guess it depends on the game, but yeah, again, I'm just giving my observations. Matt KBWI says maybe Feign Death window opens when health is under 40%. That's also an interesting thought, that like, you know, like the thing sees that you're like already bleeding. It's going to be a lot easier, at least. Maybe not required, but maybe more likely. Maybe more likely when you're under 40%. Tumaden says, after months of watching your videos, I finally get to catch a live show. So glad you made it. That's awesome to hear. I think this is going to be a good one to tune into. Jothany says level of health is a good gauge. Yeah, I agree. I had never actually considered that, but I like that the more I think about it. Either being required, again, because like that definitely involves a certain amount of risk, even more risk than just having to take a hit, you know? Although I don't know, like you could maybe really good. Maybe it just depends on what your skill level in Feign Death is. Like, again, like let's say you're going up against some sort of humanoid like a guard or something, and that isn't going to be so easily fooled, and like maybe they like they just barely graze you with their sword, and then you're like, oh, and you fall down, die, and then like I just barely hit you. Like I know I hit you, but it was like a 3-point damage type hit. Like it just grazed off you, and you're really trying to make me think that you're dead. Like I don't know, maybe it kind of reminds me of like soccer players that like they just barely get like hit in the ear and they're like, oh my god, and they like fall over dying. maybe if you're top tier Feign Death skill, maybe you could pull that off. But yeah, all these factors just make for a more interesting, just more strategic ability in my eyes. We got 2 more minutes. See, time flies when you're having fun. We only 2 more minutes to go until the Vision Realm streams kicks up, if they're on time. Hey, Lucilla, welcome. Zonk is here. Silva DeBarber is here. This is what time are they doing the update? Yeah, 1 minute now. It's 1 minute. Whoa. Don't have to wait very long. Silver Barber says, how are you feeling about the state of the game? Your honest opinion, 1 minute. That's a fantastic question. Under a minute. State of the game. I'm going to say state of the project in general as a whole. The project, in my honest opinion, is in better shape now than it ever has been in its history. And I can say that very confidently as somebody who has been, in building the library of Pantheon, been taking a look at the entirety of Pantheon's history in great detail. And it's not exaggeration to say that the that the project is better now than it ever has been. The communication side, though, the corporate side, I obviously can't speak for internally, but as far as their external communications, it's still lagging behind quite a bit, and it's not really representative. It's not really accurately representing how good of shape they're actually in. Anyway, I'm gonna have to leave it at that for now because they are kicking off their stream right now, and so we're gonna switch over to that. Here we go. And yes, this is a VOT shirt. This is the Community Matters shirt from a few years ago.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the July 1st, 2021 Pantheon Rise of the Fallen developer stream. I am your host, David Roenick-Schlau. We have an awesome show tonight, action-packed, full of guests, full of action. I already said action, but we're going to have a lot of it, so we're getting ready to go here. Let me introduce our sort of menagerie of cohorts tonight. We have, of course, Chris Joppa-Birkins, our creative director. Say hello, Chris.
Hello, everyone.
Joining us by voice, we will have Kyle Olson, our lead programmer.
Hey.
And Tyler Sacred Soaks, our associate designer. And joining, lots
of people in voice.
And joining us for the first time ever on screen, or on voice actually, will be Adam Mostel, our associate designer. Adam, welcome. Welcome to the team.
Thank you very much. Excited to be here.
So before we get getting going on the monk stuff, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and you know, you have this name, this code name that we internally can't pronounce. So maybe if we publicly get it going, I think the rest of us will be able to catch on.
That is fair. So the official pronunciation is Tehom, T-E-H-O-M, Tehom.
Tehom.
I don't know why I put that out there like a spelling bee, but there you go.
well, I think we've got.
Can you use it in a sentence, Adam?
I always thought it was like T-home.
I can't, but I can give you its origins. Because I am a Darkmere fanboy, I wanted to choose a name that represented that, and I usually like to go for some biblical kind of oriented names, not like, you know, super identifiable, but in this case, Tehom is Hebraic or ancient Greek for the deep or the abyss.
There you go.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Super deep. Roenick is just a hockey player. But anyway, on to the stream. Thanks for that lengthy info. Mr. Perkins, we got some awesome monk stuff tonight. Why don't you lead the charge?
We do indeed. Yeah, class showcases are probably up there at the top of my list of favorite things that we get to do.
How many times is he going to say excited? You need to put your guesses in chat. How many times? We got to keep track.
Of viewable.
You have not missed anything, Donler.
To kind of show off the monk class and what it's all about. So I've asked Kyle and Adam and Tyler to be here because the five of us, including David, have spent the last several hours working together on kind of how we wanted to showcase all this. So the way I would like tonight to go is we're obviously going to watch the footage. We're going to see the monk in action. I'm going to be narrating a little bit and explaining some of what we're seeing as we go. But I've asked all of these gentlemen here to kind of add their perspective on not only, you know, any insights on the monk class that they have, that they've observed or that they enjoy, but also any of the other, you know, things that are happening at the same time in the footage and the various things we're going to be looking at. So without further ado, let's go ahead and pull up the first video.
Oh, we get video. That's what I'm talking about.
So when we talk about the monk, we are talking about a physical damage-based
Fairthale. Hello.
DPS specialist. That is the monk. Physical damage-based DPS specialist, and particularly the monk excels in high sustained
blood
damage. We're going to talk about, kind of show off how that looks tonight. But beyond that, monks also excel in certain special utilities. Pulling is a great example. The ability that the monk has to pull effectively, to split up groups of mobs that would otherwise be way too dangerous for, you know, a group to take out on their own. the monk is able to go in there and through an ability like Feign Death, disrupt that group and allow their disrupt the enemy group and allow their personal group to split one of those mobs off. They also have an ability to flex into this avoidance-based off-tanking role for a short period of time. So we're going to see all that stuff here tonight. What I want to start off with first is the monk combat resource, their chi. Monk combat is centered on the flow of their chi. And you can see, we're going to go, I'm kind of talking ahead of the video playing here, but if you look at the video, you see on the nameplate there, you've got 5 symbols and then a blue bar that goes across horizontally. That blue bar represents your chi. And monks have a pool of 50 total chi, and their chi generates passively at a rate of 5 chi per second at all times. So monks are always trying to get back up to full chi. Their chi is generating passively at all times 5 chi per second. Now, in addition to chi, monks also have their chakra gates, and you see those 5 chakra gates there. Those chakra gates, when opened, dramatically alter the flow and the nature of the monk's chi, and it allows them to perform various feats and techniques and different things in combat. Specific abilities will open a specific gate when used, and will leave that gate open for 5 seconds before it closes. So when you use an ability, like we've been seeing here, the ability in slot 1 on the utility bar there is the backflip ability. When I use the backflip ability, it opens the gate of balance. You see the gate of balance is open there, and that gate of balance will stay open for 5 seconds. And for those 5 seconds, I can use any other gate of balance abilities that I want to, but I can't use any abilities that open other gates. So I've demonstrated that with backflip there. When I use backflip, I can use also the second ability I have on the bar there was ebb and flow. That also increases my dodge chance and it opens the gate of balance. So I'm able to use those 2 abilities interchangeably, but I was not able to use Feign Death because Feign Death opens a different gate. So we're going to watch this video again here and kind of see it in action. So backflip, and you can see the gate of balance is open, then it closes after 5 seconds. When I bring out another ability that uses gate of balance, or any other abilities I have that use the gate of balance, I can use them freely, but I can't use any other gate for 5 seconds while that's open. Let's go ahead and move on into the second video. Perfect.
What the heck is that thing? Is that
now, we want to talk a little bit about monk auto attack.
Is that one of those wolfkin?
We really wanted to focus on expanding the monk's auto attack baseline. We wanted the monk to be a very rapid attacker. The first thing I'm showing off here in this video is that I am cheating here with a very high health, high armor, high health regen item because I wanted to be able to just showcase the combat, not worry about dying mid demonstration. But we're emphasizing and expanding the monk's auto attack in 2 ways. Number one, the monks are focused on their fists. Their weaponry, the itemization is focused on fist fighting. And as such, monk weaponry will boast the fastest weapon speeds out of the itemization pool. But second is the introduction of passive combat actions. And you'll see what I'm talking about here in just a second. We don't want the monk to be a spammy button mashing class. And so having abilities like a strike and a kick and these things they become just very boring and mundane to press all the time. So what we've done is we've taken the strikes and the kicks and we've turned them into passive actions. And what that means is whenever I successfully auto attack, whenever I land an auto attack, I have a chance to elbow strike. Whenever I successfully land an auto attack, I have a chance to wheel kick. I have a chance to use a strike or a kick just through my basic auto attack combat. And we did that because we wanted monks to be able to focus on the wide variety of other abilities they have to use situationally. So now you see here, I've got my strike and my kick on the bar, and simply by auto attacking every time I make contact, I have a chance to weave in a strike or a kick. And the cool thing about those is that we're looking at the very basic strike and kick here. These strikes and kicks will grow in variety and grow in, or, represent a wider variety of effects. And so the strike that I choose to have on my bar and the kick that I choose to have on my bar is actually important to what I want to accomplish in combat. If my goal is to just maximize my DPS, there'll be certain strikes and kicks, depending on what I'm fighting, that would be best to do that with. If I'm looking specifically for a certain kind of proc or a certain kind of effect that I need to proc in certain cases, then I would choose a very specific ability for that. So again, this is about expanding and emphasizing that base auto attack layer so that as we start layering on all the other abilities we're about to look at, monks aren't focusing so much on the micromanagement or the button mashy, like I've got to push my strike, I've got to push my kick over and over again, that now it's kind of built into the base auto attack system.
Did you guys see the disposition in the back there? There was a rabid one. A rabid.
So we're going to look at the first of many special abilities, and this is resonating palm. And resonating palm is an ability line for the monks that is essentially a damage dealing attack that restores 5% of your maximum health. So again, kind of playing off of this theme of monks being a little bit in the bruiser and a little bit in this kind of off-tank flex, they have resonating palm, which returns a little bit of health, and it's based on your maximum health, and so it's kind of just a very consistent amount of healing that you can get back. Now, resonating palm opens the gate of soul, and so when I use resonating palm and open the gate of soul to use that, you can see that others of my abilities become unavailable to me, because with Gate of Soul open, I can only use Gate of Soul abilities for those 5 seconds. All right, let's go to the next video. Okay, so this is Blazing Hand Punch. This is one of my favorite abilities. Blazing Hand Punch is a charged ability. And as such, I can tap it like I just did there in the video, and it's just a straight punch. But I can also hold it down and charge it up to release it. And then when I do so, I do increase the amount of chi that it costs. But it goes from 150% damage all the way up to 400% weapon damage. And then you see it has a knockdown effect on it as well when I fully charge it. And so I have the option as a monk, if I want to knock a target down, I can build that Blazing Hand Punch up and knock it down, and that may be something that someone else in my group can capitalize on. Or if I'm looking to just flash it out there and get a single quick hit, then
that's like
a
a 6-second knockdown. Wow.
There's several other charged abilities
cool.
in the game. It's an ability type that we want to utilize for a few of the different classes, and it's become one of our favorite abilities to use because it just gives you this really cool decision making with how long you want to hold it. I can let it go halfway through. I could let it go 3/4 of the way through. And it would cost an amount of chi and do an amount of damage commensurate to how long I have charged it up. Let's go to the next video. So now here's Inner Fountain, and this is a very, very cool ability that I love, and it creates a lot of interesting possibilities for the monk based on the way the gate system works. So once this video loops, all right, so here you see I start off with Burst of Chi. Burst of Chi is a high damage single attack. It costs 40 chi, so it uses almost my whole chi bar, not quite, and it opens the gate of release. When I start combat, it puts me down way low on chi, but then I pop Inner Fountain and boom, it fills my chi bar back up to full, allowing me to charge my Blazing Hand Punch and pay the full chi cost for that ability. So what I love about Inner Fountain is it gives you the opportunity to kind of combo and play with your gates and your chi so that you can set yourself up for different abilities and depending on what the situation is. You can see there, I just want to call out in this video too, you'll notice that at the start of the video I'm at full health, and then the mob uses this attack called Rend that absolutely chunks me down, to like 30-40% health. That's going to matter in a little later when we look at some of the monk's defensive and avoidance-based abilities. All right, let's go to the next video. The other cool thing about Inner Fountain is it doesn't only maximize your chi, but it also resets your gates. It opens all of your gates back up, or I'm sorry, it closes your gates. So if you have an active gate open that's keeping you from using an ability that you need to use, you can also use Inner Fountain to not only fill your chi bar, but close all of your chakra gates, allowing you to use an ability from with a different gate. So in this example, again, I use Resonating Palm, which opens the Gate of Soul, but I'm so low on health that I decide I need to feign death because I'm about to die. I can't do that while the Gate of Soul is open. So I use Inner Fountain to close that gate, and then I could use feign death to end the fight. So here we go. I use Resonating Palm, opens the Gate of Soul. Then I pop Inner Fountain to close that gate so that I can use feign death and in combat.
Yeah, all right, that's
cool. Let's go to
cool.
the next video.
I could live with that.
Chi burn. Now, this is where the monk's damage dealing capabilities really come to life, and that is in Chi burn. What Chi burn does is it is an effect that you cannot cancel. Once you activate Chi burn, your attack speed increases dramatically, your critical hit chance and your critical damage increase dramatically, and you become an absolute powerhouse. The downside is that you cannot cancel the ability, and as soon as you activate it, you begin losing chi, a percentage of your chi and a percentage of your health every second until the effect ends, or until you die, or until you run out of chi. And so Chi burn is something that, the vision there is that monks would use it often as part of their main damage dealing kit, but it's with that added risk of knowing that while this is active, my healer can't heal me, my own healing abilities can't heal me, and so I have to be very careful about when I use it to make sure that I'll still be able to recover. And we'll take a look at, I think there's a moment that we captured in all of our filming where you see some that, kind of causing some problems sometimes with the healer's plan. But in this specific scenario, what I love about this footage here is you've got the monk starting off with Chi burn. So pumps Chi burn early in the fight. You see my health starting to tick down. You see the Chi starting to tick down, but I'm doing a lot of damage. Once the ability wears off, which is when I get down to can't pay the Chi cost, I pop Inner Fountain, fill my Chi bar back up, and immediately go into my Blazing Hand Punch charge up to finish off that run with a fully charged Blazing Hand Punch, and then we're off to the races. All right, next video. Let's get into some of the defensive and avoidance-based abilities for the shaman, or I'm sorry, for the monk. The monk has, as I said at the beginning, the ability to flex into a short-lived defensive avoidance-based role. And one of the abilities that they use to do that is called Setting Sun. And what happens when I use Setting Sun, you saw the little yellow aura come around me. For 3 seconds, all of my defensive mitigation goes away. For 3 seconds, the target is able to deal full damage to me without worrying about blocks or dodges, without worrying about armor class, without worrying about damage reduction. They just completely can wail on me for those 3 seconds. At the end of those 3 seconds, Setting Sun becomes the Rising Moon ability. You can see the icon change. And with Rising Moon, I can use that whenever I want to. And when I do, 50% of the damage I took during Setting Sun becomes max health, like extra health. And 50% of that damage becomes extra armor class. So I'm basically choosing to use Setting Sun at a point where, like in this case, I wait for the Rend ability, which is that huge, damage dealing hit. I take all of that damage, but then I build it up. It's very similar to like the Black Panther suit, where you take that kinetic energy, that damage that you get hit with, it's stored, and then I can use it with Rising Moon when I need to beef up my health and beef up my armor. All right, let's go to the next video. The Secret of the Five Gates. So this is a passive for the monk. You can read the description there, but the Secret of the Five Gates is essentially a cheat death ability.
Another one?
While I have this passive active on my bar, anytime I take damage that would kill me, instead of dying, I am healed for the amount of damage that was done to me plus 5% of my max health. And that can only occur once every 5 minutes. So you can see this. He uses the Rend ability here. And when he uses the Rend ability, you see Secret of the Five Gates go on cooldown. And it's actually healed me for the amount of damage that it did, plus 5% of my max health. So this is just a very solid passive for the monk. It is once every 5 minutes. And so...
I'm back.
So, 3 abilities. There's
you just using everything that you haven't talked about at all right away. That's great.
Yes. All right. So, the first ability I used there
just in time for the group.
That was my kind of long distance.
Just in time for the group footage.
Pulling attack. So I was able to pull that mob.
Where are we?
The very next
Amber
ability
Fate?
I flowed into there is called Chase the Wind, which is basically a short duration dash for the monk, which is super exciting because it's one of the ways we want to evolve their pulling game, is being able to kind of get that burst of ground speed away from the target. And so especially because casting enemies in Pantheon are so intense at times, for a monk to be able to pull effectively, they have to be able to utilize line of sight and some other environmental things often. And so
like
Chase the Wind is designed to kind of give them that extra boost to kind of burst away, get a little bit of a distance if they need to make it around a corner, or just need to get back to their group more quickly. And then we are playing in a kind of a new section of Amber Fate that we haven't shown in any streams yet.
It's less blue, which I think is a good
responding to one of the questions here I saw in real time. And then lastly, you saw me use Rock Stance, and Rock Stance is going to purge any poisons that I have on me. And as long as I channel Rock Stance, it's going to make me immune to poisons and increase my armor class pretty significantly. All right, so here's some Feign Death pulling. Here we go.
Oh, here it is. This is the split.
I think one of the things that was cool to see in the group was the synergy, that we always talk about. I was playing an enchanter, and when I was casting the haste buff on you, just to see how much your DPS was going up every time.
We had one of the pulls where we got the shaman enrage buff and the enchanter buff on him at the same time with chi burn going, just to see what we could get him to do, and it's a lot of damage.
Yeah,
I like how his name is Kyle Won't Debuff.
It's a lot of damage. Yeah, I was out DPSing Adam there a few times on the wizard.
Yeah, you were. So just going to call this out real quick to the chat. So I know we've been talking about traits and dispositions a little bit more recently, and that is something that I've begun to work on. If you're looking at the ritualists right now on that screen with the offensive target, there's that little icon right there. That's actually a buff that he's gaining by being in proximity to another character. So that's actually a trait that I've applied to all of these Blood Fangs. They are actually gaining some buffs based on being in range because they are pack hunters.
Yeah, that made a huge difference when the pack hunting trait was put on the Blood Fangs. That was amazing because you really want to get solo pulls too. It's not just we want to get solo pulls because it's easier to take down, but when these things bundle up together, their attack speed gets out of control.
Nice. And yeah, Tumiden, you can line of sight casters.
Awesome. Let's go to the second long play video.
It's kind of an important part of strategy.
Keep watching here.
Sacred, you've been quiet, which is a shock.
That's because he's been tanking. He doesn't want us to talk about it.
All right. Man, you go AFK for 5 minutes in the pool, and jeez.
Here's some off tanking for the monk here for a few minutes.
There's the Primal Fury, big.
Oh, there's
big
the
attack speed.
Yep.
Big
I just
crit.
backflipped the big heavy hit there.
Oh, I mean, I guess I can add, since I'm not tanking now, that Yeah, so I know everybody always looks into the numbers as we go through these streams and things like that. And, we just have to keep in mind that we are in pre-alpha. These are classes coming online or continuing to be iterated as we go. So there's, room for adjustments and things, and we're going to continue tuning and tweaking as we go forward. So they're not final by any stretch of the imagination, but it does give you a good indication where things are at right now. And honestly, I thought it looked great from what your perspective was, CP. I mean, you looked like you had a lot of fun. I was jealous on the Dire Lord. I wanted to jump on the monk myself at times, but I'm excited to see what the other players are feeling when they get in there and get their hands on this as well.
Yeah, I think it was pretty great how seamlessly the monk just slides in. I was curious how that was going to go because we've been dealing with the same classes for a little bit here, and it was great to see just in action and how everything sort of was, the synergy between all the classes was working really well.
And the monk really forced us to push some of our animation systems further too, to make things more fluid with fast-paced combat, make sure animations flowed well from one to another.
Yeah, I was going to say, the animations
get to benefit from that work as well.
The animations look pretty good.
So I'm seeing a question about Blazing Hand Punch, and with the 3-second charge up, is how is that going to fit with what typically seems to be a pretty slow or a pretty fast casting time for NPCs? And there's a couple of ways to answer that. Number one, it is purposely that way so that it's not just it's not very easy to always interrupt the target, but it's also that you're really looking to focus on abilities that have a longer cast time. So for example, the Rend ability that the Bloodfang Raiders use is actually a 4.5 second cast time. So I have a kind of a second and a half window to notice that in time to get that off, and that's not easy to do. That's something that I really have to be paying attention, and if I pull it off, great. If I don't, then it's pretty standard. But the other side of it is that it's also going to be on certain classes to slow casting speed or slow ability activation speed down through debuffs and things like that. And so when their casting speed is slowed down, it only makes it more possible to have some of these longer interrupts play in.
What's the name of that ability that allows you to kind of like, after you pull, to jump ahead a little bit?
Chase the wind.
Chase the wind. That's
cool. And also, did that mob like intentionally blink behind him? Did you see that? He just appeared behind him?
I guess Monk's a little boring of a class, huh? Not much to do there.
What I love about the Monk is that they can get very complicated and very deep. And utilizing the different gates that they have, using Inner Fountain to kind of weave between different gates to do some pretty cool things. But when it comes to their main role, when it comes to really executing their damage dealing, it's very smooth, and it allows you to do that effectively with a heightened baseline, so that you can use your other abilities to weave in to increase your damage dealing, or always be kind of mindful of the action going on and how to respond to that. It's a really big theme in Pantheon. We want players to be cognizant of what's going on around them, and the class designs are meant to be complex and have a real depth to them, but also not be so micromanaged on your bar and on your cooldowns and on your, just any kind of rotation-based gameplay. I mean, didn't see any rotation there on the Monk. The Monk was all about, responding to different stimulus, paying attention to, mob placement, and utilizing things at the right time to set other things up, set other classes up, to get out of the way or to get the mob, positioned in the right place. So really, really excited with the way that it's going. And the other thing that we want to make sure to say really, really clearly is when it comes to whenever we show gameplay and you see, like in this case, these two long play videos we just did, where we had a group of 5, fighting these NPCs. Balance and tuning is something that will continue not only through alpha and not only through beta, but balance and tuning and that, kind of dance is something that really will go on throughout the life of the game. And I know what most people are looking at is broad strokes. They're looking at, okay, what are the broad stroke directions that things are headed? Because time to kill is something that comes up often. Like, how long is it going to take, to kill a mob? We're used to seeing games, kind of the modern trend, or it's weird to say modern anymore because it's been a while, but there's definitely been a trend towards much faster paced time to kill, and not only fast time to kill, but killing multiple targets at once. And so we are intentionally moving a bit away from that direction. We don't want you to be mowing through things. We don't want you to be able to kill something in just the blink of an eye, because combat is so wonderfully tactical and so wonderfully strategic when there's time to set things up and take advantage of opportunities and see things happen that you need to respond to, and mobs having time to react and interact with one another and interact with the makeup of the group that they're facing. And so these are all things we're continuing to dial in. I like where we're at right now. Is it where we're going to launch at? Probably not. But we are making steps and getting closer and closer and closer to that sweet spot where we want our time to kill to be, where we want our mob encounter difficulty to be, based on, are you just kind of in the overland overworld, just exploring and casually enjoying the scenery and wanting to check out what's over there and what's over there, or are you deep in the heart of a dungeon and needing to be absolutely on your game? It's just a really interesting dance that is something to keep an eye on, and we're still dialing it in.
Yeah, and there was some footage that we didn't show earlier where where I had to mez some mobs, and we were kind of focused here on the monk stuff, but all that sort of good stuff is in there. Okay, so I think what we'll do is we got some patch notes, and then we'll come back and we'll take some questions from the chat here. Last episode, last month, I decided to sing the patch note song with a guitar, and we get some community feedback on that. And as a result, we have maybe the first of what I think will probably end up being many community contributions to the patch note song.
Oh my
God.
God.
I'm gonna give up the spotlight today and hand it over to a song contributed by Nathan Napalm.
I saw that coming.
We got these patch notes just for you. There might even be a bean or two. These changes are brand new. Patch notes, it's what we do.
All right.
So there you go. I don't know. He may have a little notch or two on me. I'm not sure. And on that note, go ahead, CP. Why don't you lead us off with some patch notes? And I'll take some questions from the chat.
Thanks for sliding that over to me. That's good. following that. Thanks, Nathan. That's great. That's great. So, patch notes wise, in the producer's letter, I kind of broke down a lot of the highlights from our patch notes over the last couple months, really. And so we're not going to go through those again. Obviously, the two main things have been the combat awareness for our NPCs and the monk class implementation. And as you can see, as I said in the letter, we've made excellent progress on the monk, and I'm excited for us to keep moving in the same direction with the ranger and with the summoner, and getting those next two classes online so we can be showcasing them like this as well. I'm just looking back through the highlights here to see So I mentioned the charged and the combo ability types. We saw both of those in play tonight, so I just wanted to clarify what that means. So charged being the blazing hand punch, where you're able to tap something to use it immediately, but you're also able to hold it and charge it up for a greater effect. And then the combo ability type is the setting sun, rising moon example, where you use an ability and then it becomes a different ability, kind of two sides of the same coin. The changes to Thresh and Sanguine Blade are some examples of just ongoing class iteration. We did make some nice strides in our bringing the Shaman Vision resource back online and having that fully implemented and working now. We updated the Rogue UI art, did some work on the Wizard Arcane line, and was a good month for class. We have class implementation, like class development happening, but then we also have class iteration and kind of continuing to refine the classes that we have. Kyle, did you want to talk about the immunity system at all, and just what you've been working on there?
So we just improved. We had an immunity system in place before, where you could say, I want to be immune to fire or any sort of damage type. We've just expanded that so you can become immune to specific ability IDs or buffs that are associated with entity status types. So say you want to create an NPC that has full stun immunity, but can still be knocked down, for example. That's possible to do now. We've just expanded that functionality quite a bit.
Yes, indeed. Is there anything that you want to say about the HDRP stuff and just kind of what we've been looking at, just generally speaking,
just the look dev process that's kind of going on?
Yep.
Yeah, so we're in the process of bringing over some specific assets and doing what's required to get what would you call it? Just a look dev test scene, trying to set the bar for where we want the graphics to look in the near future for this upcoming conversion. That's well underway at the moment. And just looking through here, and the animation work that you did recently. Yeah, I slightly mentioned that before. So we had to greatly improve how well animations can flow into one another, with the monk being able to rapidly auto attack the way that he can now, especially with like the elbow strikes and wheel strikes underneath the hood. Those actually happen at the same time. So we needed to improve the animation queuing potential for that. And that's just a all across the board improvement for everybody.
Yes, indeed. Very cool. And Adam, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about some of the, I know that we mentioned Adam coming onto the team in the producer's letter, and I mentioned there specifically his work on dispositions and traits, as well as the perception system and encounter design as well. And would love for you to talk a little bit about you don't have to get into too many specifics, you can if you'd like, but some of the work that you've been doing and looking, over the current zones that we have, and just some of the approach you're taking and thinking through the NPCs right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, we've been talking about focusing on making sure that we have the pacing of combat right, making sure that we have opportunities for there to be, manipulation of states, for there to be things for players to react to. I was personally really impressed by the fact that by the end of our play session, CP was managing to counteract every single thing that I had put in place to try and kill him. So that was pretty cool. But as you look back through some of that footage, which I'm sure, many people in our community will do, you'll notice that there's a few abilities that actually have logic tied to them now that, we did not have support for in the past. So, for example, where we have the Ritualist casting this AoE disease spell that has come out a couple of times, the Ritualist is actually only using that when he detects enough players to warrant using it. And there's all sorts of layers of logic that we're now able to incorporate to determine when NPCs are going to be using certain abilities, or when they're going to try and counter other players, and just introducing those opportunities for NPCs and players to react and interact with each other. now that we have that framework in place, what I'm also doing a lot of is taking a look at what are the stories that we're trying to tell, what are the populations that we have, and how to create a play space in which players will be able to learn the behaviors of certain types of families of enemies. So, for example, where we have wolves, you may understand that wolves have a default type of behavior. So pack hunter is a great example of this, where all wolves may be pack hunters by default, but then rolling in through things like dispositions and traits, some additional complexities to that, where a wolf may have a different behavior than a rabid wolf. And rabid may be a disposition that exists across all animals, because all animals have the potential to become rabid. So we're doing a great deal of exploration on that, and really coming up with some interesting challenges for you all.
It's been really, really fun to see all that kind of brewing and cooking and coming online. It's been really cool. Really cool.
Has he said excited yet? I haven't noticed.
Tyler, I'd love to hear from you a little bit too, just on what your focus has been and where you're looking to take things over the next few weeks.
Yeah, so it's always fun because this is my playground, especially this time frame during development where we have the testers coming in and out, and I'm able to really swing that pendulum back and forth in a lot of different ways with a lot of different situations. So with the PA sessions and in between those, we do a lot of work with the numbers, just really it's almost a test and learn at times, where we want to see how we're influencing player behavior with certain numbers and statistics and how things come together. And it's always amazing how quick, like Adam was saying, you put something in the game and you're like, okay, this is going to take a few minutes for players to figure it out, for people to understand. And CP, it took you the matter of minutes to realize what was happening and then jump into it and go full throttle and know what you were doing. So it always amazes me how our testers are able to do that. And so that's why between these PA sessions, I've been really focusing on dialing in some of the existing classes that we have and getting ready to bring the monk into play as well, so that just like David said earlier, we can slide the monk into the group dynamic there, and it really just feels natural. And that becomes such an important part to the growth of Pantheon as we go forward, bringing the other classes online, having all the content as we're putting it into the game just immediately become available and feel like it's right in line with everything else. So right now it's really taking those broad and long swings back and forth in that pendulum of time to kill, damage, cost of resources, how the itemization is working and filling within the game, what pieces of statistics and things are doing for us. And so I'm having a lot of fun with that myself, and that's what I've been really focusing on, so that next time we get the testers in there, they should feel quite a few differences between some of the classes and itemization pieces and things that are going on. And, taking that feedback to, again, what you brought up earlier, Chris, is dialing in those numbers to really get that feel of what we want to provide for the player experience going forward, whether they're in a smaller group or a full group, or whether they're in the best gear or, just some, hand-me-downs, if you will, that they find along the way. So trying to find that sweet spot as we go, so to speak. And this is really my playground, my test time. So I'm excited about it. That's what I've been working on for the last couple months now.
Nice. Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, let's, with whatever time we've got left, let's do some Q&A and just see what's on everyone's minds.
Sounds like a plan. Let's start out with this one. I know the answers. We're going to get them for the community. Can you clarify, or I'm going to pretend like I know the answers. Can you clarify how the passive punch and kicks will be activated and whether or not they can be swapped mid-fight? If they need to be on your hotbar, is that true of all passive skills?
They do need to be on your bar. Most of the passive skills that we've shown to date have been utility passives, so they have been on the utility bar, but those two need to be present on the bar. So we view passives the same way we view active abilities, where you are making a choice on what you have present. Passive, not so much like an innate. An innate ability would be something more like a racial trait that is an innate ability that you don't need to activate. But something like a passive is something that you want kind of passively active in a part of your loadout, but not something that you just have all the time, no matter what. So at this stage, anyway, it is something that does need to be on the bar. What we've shown with the monk is examples of active passives, where in the monk's case, the strike and the kick, you don't have to have them on your bar. They don't have to be there, but they are a part of that kind of baseline auto attack enhancing opportunity that the monks have. And so the more strikes and kicks that you find and train in, then the more options you have of what to have on your bar, but only having one strike and one kick at a time. I think that answered that question.
Yeah, this is somewhat related. In your dream expectations on average, how often would players be adjusting their bars and move sets as a reaction to encounters and enemy types?
If we're talking like, that's a tough question to answer in a way that would actually quantify it, at least at this stage. What I can say is that it
depends on your class as well. It's not going to be like a hard number for the entire game, I don't think.
Sure, absolutely, yeah.
Like a shaman's going to swap probably a lot more than like a warrior, for example, being more of a flex role.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really a lot of what it. So flexing is part of the consideration that you would make in wanting to switch loadouts on the fly. So if you sense that you're coming up into a situation that you need that flexibility, then you might, do a change in your loadout to make sure that you have what you need to prepare for that. I think the key word is we want to create a reasonable sense of freedom. And so I think that my expectation is to see players probably switching loadouts a lot while they're feeling things out. And I think what will then happen is you will have players getting comfortable. I mean, that's been my experience with the monk most recently, where we don't have the loadout switching, kind of mechanic in place yet, where you can save loadouts and quickly switch between them. But there was a lot of, putting different abilities on the bar and not, and trying different things out until I found something that really worked well for me in most cases. And then and this is the case, anytime you see design go from paper to real life implementation, you take something so well on paper that's like you've been, like even just birthed, and it so well, but then it's like experiencing it takes time to kind of get your head and your heart fully around it. And when you do, you realize this combination of things works really well in this situation, this and others, and that grows over time. So the key is making sure the players have the freedom to explore that and find the things that work for them, and then have access to those as often as they need it, as long as it's in between combat encounters.
Cool. This question probably is a quick answer, but how will pullers be able to let people know X is coming if the bars are for skills only? Will the UI bars be able to be added for socials, like incoming X targets? We have macros, right?
Yes, we will have macro support, like for social macro support, and then we will have 16 general slots that will be available as general bars as well for things like clickies, social macros, things like that.
Yes, they did model the feign death animation after my character, for those of you asking. Are the elemental-themed monk attacks truly elemental and therefore compatible with things like an Archive's elemental attunement, or is it just a neat visual with no key into other game mechanics? Good question.
Depends on the ability. Some of them are fire, right? Some of them are physical.
That's correct. That's correct.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we'll just leave it at that. Let's see what we got here. With the monk coming online, how helpful is it for gameplay? Can the monk kit be used for other ways? That's a Kyle question, I believe.
Sorry, can you ask it again?
I can try. With the monk coming online, how helpful is it for gameplay? Can the monk quote unquote kit be used in other ways?
Sure. Just as off-tanking DPS, I'm not 100% sure I understand the question.
The question is saying how much runway, and I can answer this question. I mean, the answer is a lot. And so again, the question is, now that the monk's kit is finished, how much runway, how are we going to be able to work that into content throughout the game with NPCs and how they fight and things like that? Yeah. And it's a lot. Yeah.
There you go. Okay.
Because think of it like this, like it's not just the specific monk abilities. So Blazing Hand Punch, for example, will there be NPCs that are, high level monks that can use abilities like Blazing Hand Punch? Absolutely. But it's the charge up mechanic. Think more along those lines. Now that we've developed the charge mechanic, you can have, martial arts charged abilities. You can have, like epic backstabs that are charged up and, literally like stab through you kind of thing. You've got, pushes and pulls that can be charged to really launch something much further than normal. You've got fireballs that can be charged up and loosed, and they become bigger and bigger as you charge them. There's so much that can be done with just that single mechanic that we developed with the monk in mind. But then
there's several other things too. Like you guys asked for very specific callbacks in graphs for events that you wanted. Like I want to know about incoming parries and outgoing parries that I can listen for these specific types of events and play off of them. So like there were several of those that needed to be added just for the monk kits to be fully online, and those are obviously all reusable as well.
Yep, that is a tried and true consistent thing that happens with every class we develop. We go into it with certain designs in mind that we need to execute, and invariably we come away with a much broader, scope of functionality than we started with because of all the little things that are needed to support these things, and then they become useful in so many ways.
I can't find the question in the chat, but I'll paraphrase. Somebody had asked essentially how we felt about the other classes that we already put in, given the complexity of the monk. Like, is there, an opportunity to go back into any of those now and tweak, or are we happy?
Yes. Now,
constantly.
Not in an endless development sense. So there is a degree that you need to be able to call something done, but I've found that there are seasons of inspiration and seasons of inspiration that lead to revelation, that lead to implementation. And when you're developing a game over a period of time, and some of the changes we've made recently with the wizard, for example, or with the Dire Lord, are moments where you sit with a class long enough and you start to really see some of those gaps or see some of those opportunities and potentials that you want to go back. So you're not sitting there endlessly churning, like, how do I make this better, just looking at a design document, but you're in the game with them. You're listening to tester feedback. You're observing, testers play and internal tests and our QA team, and you're getting feedback from them, and you're just there. It's just this constant like song that's playing in your head. The shaman has one, and the rogue has one, and they all have music that's constantly going. And as you're listening, you're hearing new melodies, you're hearing new harmonies, you're hearing things that you just maybe not have been able to see before. And so the other key is that a lot of the complexity, this is exactly what I was hoping and low-key expecting to be the case as we get further along in development and more classes come online, because it's our tech and our mechanics are getting deeper as we go along, because we're building. There's this accumulating complexity and of depth, and that we're able to do things with the monk now because of that we weren't able to do early on, which is why the monk looks and feels so deep. And so there is that sense too, where we look back at the previous classes we've already finished and said, okay, now we can actually support this really cool thing that we've been wanting to do but haven't been able to do before. So some of it is that revelation that comes over time, and then some of it is just the accumulation of depth that you're able to come back with later.
Last question. How soon till the next testing session? Okay. Soon. Sorry, guys, I tried. Well,
gotta do it
for the show. Adam, Kyle, Tyler, thanks for joining CP and I. It was awesome having you guys.
Thank you
very much.
Any final thoughts?
I saw 3 questions that I'm going to answer in the Pantheon Plus chat. So I'll be over there.
There you go.
Well, just a reminder that Pantheon is a crowdfunded game. If you want to check us out, we're on pantheonmmo.com. CP, any thoughts to lead us out?
Excited. Onward and upward.
Indeed. Thanks, guys.
There was one. We got one excited right at the very end. At least we got one. Oh my god.
Just for you.
This is the outro?
There might even be a bean or two. These changes are brand new. Patch notes, it's what we do.
Alright, and with that, we'll switch over. Just real quick, guys. I'm going to keep this brief because, to be honest, I got to go to bed before too long. Because like I said, my schedule's been a little crazy lately, and I got to get up at the butt crack of dawn. So, but I wanted to comment a little bit on the stream because this was a really good stream. And just overall, like I know at the beginning of this stream, I talked very, very briefly about how my opinion of how Visionary Realms communication is still kind of lacking. Like it's worth recognizing though the progress that has been made, but over the past particularly over the past 6 months or so, there have been like baby steps in the right direction, and I think that's commendable. It's still not where I think it needs to be, but specifically when it comes to these streams, this stream and last month's stream in particular were particularly good. It's been a long time since we've really had like a bad stream, but these past two in particular have felt very, very good and right on the spot. As far as like I love, especially this month, pulling in like 3 other developers just to be in voice chat and contributing and get their thoughts. I thought it had a really good vibe to it, and also showing more gameplay clips, like actually bringing us into the world, even if it's for a little bit, actually demonstrating these things that are working, like not in like a demo type, not in like a demo area, but actually in the game, like in Fairthale. Like we were actually brought into Fairthale and Amber Fate, both of those areas looking really, really good. Fairthale's coming along. Amber Fate seems like they toned down the blue hue in Amber Fate, which was really good, like that, and the fog and everything that was going on in there I thought looked really, really good. Again, like it's a pretty small thing, like it's just a tidbit. We were only there for like 5-10 minutes or so, but still just getting a hint of it and seeing like the NPC models that were wandering around and stuff is really, really good stuff. This is a really good stream. Again, even as somebody who is only mildly interested in the monk, I really enjoyed it. I think that was like the streams are definitely getting better and headed in the right direction. So I wanted to point that out because I really hope that this trend continues. About the monk specifically, like I was jotting down a few quick notes as we were watching. It seemed like you guys all really enjoyed it, and for a lot of the same reasons I did too. Like the again, I mentioned briefly that the animations were looking really, really smooth, and they talked about how this month that's actually something, the animation controller, something that they've specifically been working on, and I think that is noticeable. Just the fluidity of animations is really coming along, especially with the monk being as active of a class as it is, really fast paced, which I think is really cool, and having the animations really tight on that really makes a big difference. But yeah, I like how the monk seems to play, and how it's it feels very like snappy and engaging, which I'm always a fan of that. Like when it comes to the whole like tab targeting versus action combat in an MMO, like I've mentioned it a little bit before, how it's kind of like it's a spectrum to me, and there are lots of pros and cons along that spectrum, but I tend to prefer more of like a hybrid approach that leans slightly more toward just more action. And I think the monk lends itself well to that. Like it seems, we were talking about in chat and the devs talking about it as well, is like the monk seems to be a very complex class. Like almost at first, like I actually was having a hard time wrapping my head around what he was saying, like with the different gates and stuff. But I think that I think that's a good thing, that like it will take time to really learn all the ins and outs of it and really master that class. Like Goofy Warrior Guy said had a really good point where he said they do need to consider that some classes should be easier to play than others, so that players can choose to pick classes based on how complex gameplay they want to deal with. So Grandma can play with little Johnny and not feel too overwhelmed, and Johnny still feels challenged. That's a perfect point, and it reminds me though that like I think a good class design will allow anybody to play the monk and still be at least viable at it. But it's all about designing the skill ceiling for at least most of the classes, so that the players who really know what they're doing can shine. You know, you like I said, maybe you can, anybody can pick it up and do a good enough job. Like you're not, you know, it's not going to be miserable, and if there's enough aspects of it that are accessible that you at least feel good about playing. You know, maybe you're not just, you probably shouldn't be a rock star, you know, right off the bat, but you should at least feel it should feel fun. It shouldn't feel too overwhelming. But then as you get better, not only does it feel more fun, but it is more apparent to everybody else that you really fully deeply understand all the dynamics of that class and can really excel at it. I think that most classes should be designed with that in mind. But I really liked what I saw. I liked the charging of the abilities, the different types of abilities. Like it seems very strategic, very fun. And so again, like if those types of things are being applied to other classes, I think we're going to be in good shape. Anyway, that's all I really had on it for now. Donler says CP actually looks excited instead of exhausted these past 2 streams, which is good. Yeah, that might be part of it. Like and that's huge actually. Like, I mean, I know for a fact that Joppa's passion runs deep, and even when he's exhausted, he still very much believes in what he's doing, and I think you can tell that. But yeah, just being more like energetic, and this goes for all the devs that are in the streams. Like it's just part of being human. Like energy is infectious. Like people feed off that, even if they're not consciously aware of it. You notice that and reflect that, and so that might be part of the reason why these past 2 streams have been more enjoyable. But I think it's the content overall is good, and I think if I had to hazard a guess, I think Joppa knows that. You know, I think maybe up until more recently they haven't really even had the opportunity to show things that are really, really exciting and interesting and really worth taking a deep dive into. And so it's very clear that he's proud of what they're doing, and they should be, because I think obviously for those that have been following the game for a while, like they did kind of go through like a rough stretch, which is for a while there, which is totally understandable to be exhausted by that. You know, even the most passionate and determined people will still get exhausted. Like that's very human. Like these developers, they're humans. They're humans just like everybody else. But that was kind of what I was talking about. Also at the beginning of the stream, where while the communication is kind of lagging behind, it's getting there very slowly. It's getting small improvements here and there. But more importantly, though, that I very much am convinced that the game itself is in better shape now than it ever has been before, and I think we are seeing evidence of that in these streams. So like I said, it's perfect. These streams have been perfect marriage of game progress, communication progress. Joppa in particular is an excellent communicator and kind of anticipating questions that people are going to have and answering them, and not leaving more questions than we started with. So yeah, it's just been great. Kyle too has been, he's really good at explaining high level or more like complicated programming things and breaking them down into layman's terms so we can all understand. And also great to see Taham. Was that Taham? I already forgot the pronunciation. I could have swore it was like T-Home or something, which is like a rapper name or something. But I kind of wish we had heard more from him. But he seemed like I really liked the style that he was explaining the dispositions and everything that he's been working on too. And then Joppa, I see that you're in chat here. Sacred, welcome guys. Thank you for tuning in. Sacred too, got to give you a shout out too, man. Always good to see you. You did a good job in the stream too. Sacred says, I wouldn't dare call Joppa human. It messes with his AI. Oh boy, I take it back. Don't want him to misfire. Donler says, I don't think the broader community is concerned about the quality of recent content, only the speed of development as a whole. I think that's true. But it seems to me, though, that I also don't think that many people look at it that way, because I think a lot of people are gauging the speed of development as a whole based on the quality of the content. And so if the quality of the content isn't high, people just, I think, instinctually equate the quality of development to that. Like a lot of people seem to have a hard time understanding or conceptualizing things that are going on behind the scenes that they can't see. They're only judging strictly based off on what they see and hear from the developers. So if the communication isn't there, that's where I was saying that there can be kind of like a disconnect between how the project actually is and how it's being perceived by most people. It's super tricky. It's a complex problem, but yeah, I'm confident though that as time goes on, that gap will start to close. Goofy guy says, I do have a friend who always just says, tell me when they have a release date whenever I try to talk about Pantheon with him, and he's a champion level pledge. Yeah, I mean, that's very common. It's something I've been thinking about lately, though, that like so many people have just tuned it out completely, which like I get, like, following a game this closely is not for everyone, and it does take a long time. Kind of going back to what I was talking about before, it takes a lot of time and effort to really be able to follow it closely to get an accurate understanding of what's going on. And side note, that's one of the primary missions of the Library of Pantheon, which I've been working on, is to just make it so much easier for anybody to come and learn about the game and its progress. But I understand that not everybody really cares about that stuff. They just want a game to play. You know, for me personally, the journey of development is fascinating to me. It's obviously I've been over 5 years now have been glued to studying the development process, and it never gets old. I think it's a fascinating process, and I think it's a rare opportunity that we have to be able to watch something like this. But that's just me personally, and so I get not everybody cares that much about that aspect of it, which is why I do my best to kind of boil things down into bite-sized pieces like the Baz Flash. But again, if people you want to take it to the extreme and they're just like, tell me when they have a release date, like that's fine too. And that actually gives me a lot of hope that Pantheon someday, I don't know when, but there will come a day when Pantheon will just shock the genre, because there's so many people that don't even think that a release date is coming at all. Like they've just completely written it off. Like maybe your friend is even in that category where it's like it's not even expecting anything. Like the expectations are already so low that opens the door wide open to very pleasantly surprise people. You know, when it's actually a huge blessing to be underrated and underestimated like that, because when you do actually come out with a high quality product that nobody is expecting, like that's how you make waves. Like that really resonates with people. That really gets people talking. And so again, that it actually, you know, it sounds sad from those of us who are following development really closely. Like, you know, it might sound sad to hear about these people that they're just disinterested, but I think it's actually kind of a blessing in disguise. It gives me a lot of hope that, again, if the content and the quality is actually there, which it seems to be trending in that direction, like I said, and I have no idea when that time will be, but if it continues on this trend, I very much believe that there will come a day at some point when it will really, really surprise a lot of people in the best way possible and really, really send shockwaves through the genre. And I can't wait. That's what I'm here for. And on that note, I should probably log off and get some sleep, but I really enjoyed this stream and hanging out with you all, especially thanks to those of you who persisted through the little blue screen that we ran into partway through the stream. I'm going to try to figure out what caused that, because that has literally never happened on this computer. Never got a blue screen before. So I'll try to figure out what it was up with that so that doesn't happen again. But again, thank you to everybody who tuned in tonight. Please stay safe, have a good night, and we'll see you next time.